Moving on now, former Metro Police Detective Brett Hankeson deprived Breonna Taylor of her constitutional rights back in March of 2020. That is what a federal jury determined last night, handing down a guilty verdict to close a 3-week trial. Hankeson will go to prison. We have exclusive video of the former officer after his conviction and reaction from Breonna Taylor's mother. Isaiah Kim Martinez and senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton report from 6th and Broadway.
Mr. Hankeson, do you have any comment to this?
He's the first of the police officers involved in the Breonna Taylor raid to be convicted, now facing a maximum sentence of life in prison.
Are you surprised by the verdict? Did it surprise you at all?
Brett Hankeson leaving Louisville's federal courthouse moments after a jury found him guilty of violating Taylor's civil rights when he fired 10 shots into the side of her apartment that night. His bullets never hit her, but jurors unanimously agreed he used excessive force, willfully firing his weapon despite knowing the danger. Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, overwhelmed by emotion 1,694 days later.
Thank God that he covered 12 jurors who chose to do the right thing, who took their time to understand what was really going on and that Breonna deserved justice.
The guilty verdict coming as a shock to Palmer, who gasped in the courtroom when jurors, some weeping, confirmed their decision.
I started to feel defeated. The later it got, the harder it got. And I'm just glad to be on the other side.
It was a split verdict, the same jury finding Hankeson not guilty of violating the civil rights of Taylor's 3 neighbors living in the apartment next door. The jury deliberated over the course of 3 days, at one point deadlocked, telling the judge they wouldn't be able to reach a unanimous decision.
4 years.
But then, the turn. The past 2 criminal trials had gone in Hankeson's favor, an acquittal and a mistrial. But now he's facing time behind bars. Those who called for justice in the summer of 2020 back out on Broadway.
I was worried. People lose focus and people get, we move on so quickly from everything. So I think we all had that worry. I said it to you the other morning, I just chose to give it to God.
Hankeson is due back in court for sentencing next March, where a judge will have the final say on what time he serves. Isaiah Kim Martinez, WHAS11 on your side.
And shortly after the verdict came down last night, our Doug Proffitt spoke to Louisville attorney Nick Mudd of the Mudd Legal Group. Mudd has been following the case closely for WHAS11 and has been in front of this federal judge before. Mudd says many factors that developed in this 3rd trial for Hankeson make the guilty verdict a shocker.
In the history of this case, how big is this?
Oh, I think it's huge, and I think, it's something that most police officers I talked to did not think he was going to get convicted at all. Most of the attorneys did not either, to be honest with you. So I think that, given the fact he walked on the state case and they hung last time in the makeup, it is extremely surprising he got convicted.
Before finding Hankeson guilty of violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights, the jury came back to the judge earlier yesterday evening, clearing Hankeson on the civil rights charge involving Taylor's neighbors. At that point, however, the jury was still deadlocked on the Breonna Taylor charge itself. The federal judge then sent the jurors back to deliberate on that one count. Mudd says sending them back in this instance is not common.
It's extremely rare. Normally, they come back. If they're deadlocked, or, if they make a finding, juries are pretty either unanimous, guilty or not guilty without specific charges. So certainly this is a jury who, took their time and certainly spent a lot of time discussing the case to make this decision, clearly given how long they've been out. And the makeup is a very unique circumstance of how this happened.
Hankeson is set to be sentenced in March of 2025. He faces up to life in prison after the guilty verdict. And Hankeson isn't the only officer involved in Breonna Taylor's death facing charges. This year, a superseding indictment against former LMPD officers Joshua James and Kyle Meany was filed, accusing them of depriving Taylor of her rights. James is now facing 2 additional charges of conspiracy and falsification of records in a federal investigation. Meany is also charged with providing a false statement to federal investigators. Prosecutors say James falsified the warrant that led officers to Taylor's home, and Meany approved it knowing it contained false information. They've both pleaded not guilty to the charges. Trial dates are pending. And former LMPD detective Kelly Goodlett pled guilty to a federal conspiracy charge back in 2022. In the plea agreement, she says she conspired with James to create a falsified search warrant for Taylor's apartment and then worked together to cover it up, misleading federal investigators. She faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison, along with a $250,000 fine and 3 years of supervision after her release.